One of the unexpected features of the 4-day 15-ballot fight over the House Speaker's gavel was when Texas Congressman Chip Roy nominated second-term Florida Republican Congressman Byron Donalds for Speaker. Donalds got the votes of all 20 holdouts on 3 of the 15 ballots, and his nomination sparked a lot of conversation, to say the least. And joining me now is Congressman Byron Donalds. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for coming down, basically across the street, because we're like really close to the Capitol. Right. So I want to start by just talking about, in the previous segment with Congressman Swalwell, we were just talking about the changes that are happening in the House under this new leadership. 3 people, including Congressman Swalwell, Ilhan Omar, and Adam Schiff, are being taken off their committees. Those who are being added, Congressman Santos is the one who made up his whole resume, allegedly, in New York. Paul Gosar, whose family has said he's a white supremacist, attended sort of meetings of white supremacy and got kicked off his committees because he tweeted out an anime of depicting him killing AOC, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Marjorie Greene. They're getting back on committees. I just wonder what you think of that. Do you think that that is a good look for the Republican Party?
No, I think going back on committees is what should happen. Look, what we told Democrat leadership when they went down this pathway of removing members from committee is basically saying you should not do that, because if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. Let's be very clear. Ilhan Omar has said things that are reprehensible. Hold on. Let me finish. She has said terrible things about the Jewish community, so much so that resolutions had to go to the House floor about them, and they were watered down. With respect to Eric Swalwell and to the other gentleman, that's something for Speaker McCarthy to speak to in more detail, because he's going to make those decisions. But we were very clear in the 117th Congress. We should not be going down this pathway of saying, oh, that member said this, they got to be kicked off of committees.
But that's happening.
No. What we're doing is, so you did it. So now this is what happens. This is the response. Let's get back to the status quo of you pick your committee people, we'll pick ours, and we'll go from there.
Well, let me ask you this, because you're not getting back to that status quo. If you're kicking people off committees and you're saying it's literally for vengeance, you're now admitting it's just for revenge. That doesn't sound like getting back to the status quo. It sounds like using committee leadership for vengeance. But that's what you just said.
If you want to change the rules, then we'll live by your rules. I don't think we should do that. But if you want to change the rules that the House of Representatives has lived under since the beginning of the Republic, and now you're going to change them because you didn't like what somebody said?
I don't think that's a change in the rules. That's happened before. You know what? I'm letting you know. People have been removed from elected. But people have been removed from committees.
I will say, though, that people being on and off committees has nothing to do with the work of the 118th Congress. We are actually going to get to border security. We're going to get to energy policy. We have to go through debt ceiling. We're going to have to figure out a way to cut our spending, curtail our spending, because we're living well beyond our means. That is the work of the Republican Conference in the next Congress. This other stuff, it's kind of a sideshow.
It's not a sideshow because, unfortunately, it's kind of the show. So let's talk about some of the things that Republicans have said that they would actually like to do when they're talking about the agenda of the Republican Party. And this is what the chairs of the committees are saying that they're going to do. Representative Mike Rogers of Alabama says they're going to investigate woke social advocacy at the Department of Defense. That has nothing to do with the border or the budget. You've got Jody Arrington of Texas saying they're going to restructure entitlement programs and slow spending, which is what you just talked about. But that means they would like to, in some cases, slash social programs, Social Security, things that a lot of Americans depend on and paid into. Michael McCall of Texas, investigate the withdrawal from Afghanistan. I think that seems fair. Calling on Mayorkas to resign. That is what Mark Green of the Homeland Security said is his priority. Calling on Secretary Mayorkas to resign. You've got Jim Jordan, who's leading Judiciary, leading a subcommittee to probe the, quote, weaponization of the federal government. You've also got those who want to investigate President Biden. But this one about weaponization of the federal government, that is about the FBI having a court-sanctioned raid on the former president, Donald Trump's home, because he had lots and lots of classified documents, hundreds of classified documents that he was not entitled to. And when he was asked to return them, he didn't. And also, it seems possible that it might be about going after the Justice Department for investigating the insurrection that Jim Jordan supported.
Well, a couple of things. First and foremost, let's speak to the weaponization committee of the federal government. We see what's happening at Twitter. Twitter now is releasing documentation, ream after ream after ream, that elements of our government was actually in contact with Twitter about delisting comments, taking people off of Twitter overall. If that is not the federal government actually suppressing free speech in the United States, which is the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, Congress has a responsibility to investigate that. Number two, and I'm going to jump around to a couple of the members that you discussed. Mike Rogers on armed services. One of the reasons that we have to get into some woke policies at the Department of Defense is because recruitment is down at the Department of Defense. If our military is not prepared to deal with battles in the future because recruitment is down, shouldn't we go in and investigate all the things that
Wait, hold on a second. No, hold on. What are woke policies at the Department of Defense?
Here is what I'm telling you. If there are issues at the Department of Defense that are decreasing recruitment, because the numbers are crystal clear at this point, and we have many members of our military who have complained about some of the programs that are going on at DOD. We have a responsibility to get to the bottom of that. My friend Jody Arrington, who's going to chair budget, he wants to look into the budget and also look into entitlements. Do you know that Social Security is going to be insolvent in 2035?
It is not going to be. That is not true. That is actually not true. No, it's actually not true.
Now, Joy,
it's actually not true.
It's
actually not. But it's actually not true.
The financial community.
That's actually not true.
That's actually not true. Will go insolvent.
That's actually not true.
Those are the facts.
That's not true.
Should we not prepare for that?
What the Republican Party and what the Tea Party have proposed is privatizing Social Security, which would actually subject Social Security to the whims of the market, which I don't think that people, that's not what they paid into.
If you look at the returns of the S&P 500 since 2006, the returns of the S&P 500 since 2006,
you're saying, so you support privatizing Social Security?
No, I want to explain to you. I am a financial professional. I'm securities licensed. Actually, I just lost my licenses because I'm not allowed to trade anymore because I'm a member of Congress. But let me assure you, if you look at the S&P 500 from 2006 until today, the growth rate in the S&P 500 would have more than taken care of Social Security, way more than the federal government has.
And each time that you had a crash, it would subject people's Social Security funds to crash. Hold on a second. So let me just, hold on a second. We're not going to have a whole long thing on Social Security. But let me just be clear. You are in favor of privatizing Social Security.
No, I'm not in favor
of privatizing it. But you just argued for it.
I said, you brought it up, and I brought you the facts on S&P 500.
So if a bill came forward to privatize Social Security, you'd be for it?
No, because what we should be doing.
Then it's a moot point.
It's not a moot point. You're trying to put words in my mouth.
But you just explained that the S&P would be a better return than Social Security.
Better returns.
So then you're for privatizing.
That is a fact.
Okay. So
don't cheapen privatization when the data is crystal clear that the returns would have been better.
Okay, you're for it. You've said that you're for it.
That means that it would have been a better situation than what we've seen to this point. Yeah.
You've been in Congress one term.
Yes.
What were your qualifications to be Speaker of the House?
Well, look, I think my colleagues, they recognize my leadership, and they've seen it in many leaps and bounds.
Can you give specifics?
In one term. Secondarily, I've served before at the state level, now here at the federal level.
What were your specific qualifications to be Speaker?
I actually understand budgets. I understand what the long-term ramifications are.
What is the job of the Speaker? Hold on a second. We have to have a conversation.
I'm trying.
You're cutting me off. Hold on. What is the job of Speaker? Can you explain what the job of Speaker is? Because the job of Speaker doesn't have to do every single member of Congress has served in. Okay, what is the job?
The job of the Speaker of the House, number one, is to actually make sure that the Congress is operating on time. It largely sets the agenda for the conference. For the entire House of Representatives. It actually engages in negotiations with the Senate and the White House on major issues, key issues. The Speaker of the House has security clearances that most members do not have. You're number three, obviously, in the line to the presidency, and there's much, much more. And the job is critical. Oh, and by the way, the Speaker of the House is also responsible for security at the
fundraising. Right. And so you've been there one term, and you're saying that you would be prepared after one term to do the job that Speaker Pelosi and others who were in leadership. You ran for leadership, and you lost that leadership race to a congresswoman who ended up being in leadership, right? So you were not elected to leadership, but you believe that though you've never served in leadership ever, and you've only served one term, that you believe you were qualified because you got into it back and forth with a fellow congresswoman who was critical of the nomination because it definitely looked like they were looking for a response to Hakeem Jeffries in you.
No, that was not anything.
Because you've literally been there for one term. So you've never been in leadership. I'm asking you the question.
I'm answering.
That's what, and the reason I'm asking that, I'm just going to ask you this question, is one of the things that, I don't know that you said it, but members have said, is that they wanted to highlight the diversity of the conference. There are 4 African-American members in the House caucus, the Republican caucus. There are 56 members in the Democratic caucus. So it's more diverse. There are more African-American members that are House committee ranking members They're at the same number that are actually members of the entire Republican House caucus. Right. So do you not believe that the idea was to make a diversity statement by nominating you?
Well, actually, first, that was not the idea. Because I was in the room when the decision was made by people who chose to nominate me. That never came.
And you've still not explained how you were public. You've never been in leadership.
Are you going to let me answer your question?
Sure, tell us.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Number two, now let's go back. The reality is that a lot of members actually do believe in my ability to lead. They do. Am I to be despised for my youth because I've served one term, when members know that I have the ability to engage other members through the conference? But it's even bigger than that. Listen, we were at an impasse last week in our speakership elections. We got that done. Kevin McCarthy is now Speaker of the House. At the same time, I was working with members on both sides of our conference to make sure that we can get the job done, and we did. And that's the only thing that matters.
Last question. We are out of time. I'm just going to go through a few of your voting record items because you've made some statements about me, about what I've said, and saying that I have tried to accuse you of being less black than other folks, which I think is an unfair statement, but that's fine. I'm going to go through some of your voting record. Right. You voted to reject the Arizona and Pennsylvania electors on January 6th. Right. Donald Trump himself has implied that the reason that Pennsylvania was illegitimate is because of Philadelphia. That's a statement about African-American voters. Hold on a second. You don't believe that Donald Trump's rhetoric led to the storming of the Capitol, even though we've just had a January 6th commission that said it did. You said that you questioned the election itself. You voted against impeachment. You voted against creating an independent commission for the January 6th account. On voting laws, you defend voting laws that said getting rid of ballot harvesting is a good thing that we did. So you've defended the Florida voting laws.
And you've actually laws in the country.
The Florida voting laws?
Florida election laws are the best election laws in the country. Go ask Arizona, go ask California, go ask New York. We do it the best.
Okay, all right. And you've defended and actually have co-sponsored 2 pieces of legislation opposing critical race theory. What is critical race theory in your view?
Critical race theory actually comes from critical theory. And essentially what it does at the graduate level, it talks about the implications of racial policies in the past in American history, their impact on society today.
The impact on law.
Hold on. The issue with critical race theory, if you distill it down into K-12 education, is you do not have the ability to have the detailed conversation of critical race theory at the graduate level. And so here's my question. If it seeps down into K-12 education, is it stuff that students are not prepared to be dealing with? Shouldn't students just be learning about reading, writing, and arithmetic?
And so you don't believe that students should be learning about the racial history of the country? Because critical race theory is not taught. Hold on. Critical race theory is not taught in a single K through 12 school.
That's not true.
One moment. It's a legal theory that's taught in law schools. Okay, we're going to have to come back and continue this conversation. We're actually literally out of time. They're telling me you have to go.
Okay.
Critical race theory is not taught in our schools. And learning about racial history actually would be good for
It's your show. I'm going to give you the last word, but we're going to do this again.
We can come back. Byron Donalds, thank you very much. We'll be back after this.